Like it's nothing. That's whatever we're talking about. That's exactly what I want to share. Is I think our genuine conversation is what people want to listen to.
Yes.
Because sometimes we're like always too focused on the protest. But it's just our talk, like the way we're having what we're talking about. So how cultures blend in.
Absolutely. So we're just talking about the blanketing tradition in many cultures.
Yeah.
Right, including First Nations, of showing respect and thank you.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more egregious that using the delivery of the blankets was used by European colonizers here as a way of spreading smallpox. It was used as biological warfare to deliberately infect the people. So they were given blankets that were infected with smallpox in order to commit the genocide that they committed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed that a lot of First Nations culture is really connected with nature, the seasons, water, and all the elements. So why is that?
I don't even think it's quite going far enough to say they're connected. They are nature. The way that their worldview is, we're inseparable. Everything is nature, and any sort of division is actually in and of itself an act of violence.
So,
because we're living on a symbiotic planet, and we're in a reciprocal relationship with all life forms on this planet. So we can't live without those life forms, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, through the very patriarchal colonial mindset and capitalism, the worldview for the last maybe 800 years has been very much a division and holding humanity as being separate and superior to nature, and viewing nature as being something that humanity needs to be controlling and has the right to exploit.
Right.
For resource extraction and for hoarding of concentration of wealth.
Yeah.
And hoarding. And this actually is completely opposite to First Nations mindset, which is hoarding is one of the most shameful things you can do. But in our system, in our dominant world society currently, the hoarding and concentration of wealth is seen as a good thing to be held up and rewarded.
Yeah. And it's almost like people want you to do that. Like even parents, they encourage you to do that in a certain way.
Yes.
So do you feel like there's a bigger change that needs to be made through education or in our institutions? We need to look at the world as one before making our decisions, our professional decisions.
Definitely education is part of it, but I don't think the answers to the problems lie within the very systems that created them. I think it's more of a spiritual awakening more than anything. It's a soul awakening, it's not just an education, intellectual shift that needs to happen. It's an evolution. It's a healing of the soul, and a rising of consciousness for our entire species. And I think COVID has been a wonderful teacher for us to give us a problem that is an example of how we can only succeed if we actually view ourselves as one family, one human family with a problem that we need to address together.
Right.
Instead of these artificial ideas of man-made boundaries of different countries, that's just a colonial construct.
Yeah. It's interesting because we were talking to this gentleman yesterday at the research site, and he said a very similar statement like this, that we have all these imaginary realities like countries, money, but we have to at the base or behind that is that everybody is connected. There's no
and we have become fragmented and fractured and divided, and that needs to be healed. It's all about healing.
How can we do that? How can I do it?
They talk about decolonization of the mind. So it's a decolonization process.
Right.
And I think it's, from my own personal opinion, it needs to be Indigenous led.
Right.
Because Indigenous peoples have never lost sight of that wisdom. We have all had it in our ancestry. My ancestry is in the UK.
Yeah.
We had that originally. Colonization has done so much damage to our species,
Right.
not just of BIPOC community, you know, Black, Indigenous people of color, but and marginalized and oppressing and the dispossession of lands of Indigenous and Aboriginal people. It's also injured the oppressors, the people doing the colonization just as much. We just don't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we have to raise up Indigenous voices and listen to their teachings, because they have not lost that understanding.
Right.
So I think the key lies in they have been silenced. The key comes in raising up their voices
Okay.
and listening and following their lead, because they have been amazing stewards of this land
Right.
since the last ice age for
Yeah.
thousands of years. It's only been in the last very short time that European colonizers have lived here, and in that short time we brought the planet to the edge of collapse
Yeah.
from our system. So our system does not work.
I can only imagine how your life experience has been, but I can relate to that point because I come from India, and we were colonized by the Britishers.
Yes.
So I can see that the traditional culture of India is so strong and is so connected, and
Yes.
it's very spiritual.
Yes.
But with the Britishers colonizing, things changed,
Yeah.
and then it's getting better now.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from and what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So what we can do to share that Indigenous knowledge with the current generation or the people?
Well, one thing
Right
I'm
now.
doing with my children's school is really getting behind to support the increase of Indigenous teachings.
Right.
It's being slowly infused into the school curriculum, because the Canadian school system has been very criticized, even recently in the mainstream media, by doing a very poor job
Yeah.
of teaching the real history of what happened here
Mhm.
and what's continuing to happen. And so we need to do a far better job of that. So just even a slow introduction, like teaching about the medicines of the local native plants through the foods course program at the school, through the arts,
Yeah.
through the literature,
Yeah.
and the history, not just teaching Western civilization,
Yeah.
having everything all about European history, but actually teaching the honest history of what happened on the lands that we are blessed to be able to
Yeah.
live and work and play on. We need to, there's so many opportunities,
Yeah.
but it also needs to be not just the children. We need to be sharing this information with everyone.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I've started reading more about Asian Indian culture, and then, like you were talking about the medicine from the plant. So
Yes.
really, whenever my partner Wana, she, if I'm feeling sick or something, earlier she used to go to buy a medicine or get something, but now we try to figure out what we can use from the land
Yes,
and heal ourselves.
yes,
And I think that goes a very long way, and that's knowledge
yes,
which is not being shared or taught in the schools.
yes.
So there's a
Well,
big gap. we
the
can
nice
fill.
thing is we have the internet now. That
Yeah.
was not something 20 years ago. So it's a wonderful platform where people can research and explore all these areas.
Yeah.
Just a straight Google search about, native medicines,
Right.
Indigenous medicines, and there's obviously books, there's courses, there's workshops, even in COVID, there's no shortage of information.
Yeah.
You just have to, decide which area interests you of this subject, and you don't even have to leave home, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing with the COVID time. It gives us a great opportunity to slow down and research these types of things and teach ourselves.
Well, I hope I can pass on your message to more people and just connect them with something they're already connected to, but I would say make them aware. Just to rephrase my words.
Yeah.
So I'll do my best, but it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.